Now we are going to discuss about for loops in Python. We already know that we use loops to execute a block of code multiple times. And we discussed about while loops previously, right? We use while loops to execute a block of code as long as the condition is true. Now there is another kind of loop called for loop. And for loops are very useful in two situations. The first one is when we want to execute a code block a fixed number of times. And the second situation is when we want to iterate over a collection of data. And by collection, we mean objects like strings, lists, sets, dictionaries, etc., which will have multiple elements. By the end of this tutorial, you will clearly understand how to use for loops in both these situations. Now let's see the syntax for loops in Python. And the way for loop works in Python is a bit different than what you might find in other languages like C, C++ or Java. Basically in Python, for loop is always used in combination with an iterable object like range, list, string, dictionary, etc. And range is something we are hearing for the first time, right? So range is also a collection of integers. We'll be discussing about this in detail in a while. All these are nothing but different collections of data, but in this context we call them as iterable object because they are made up of multiple elements, and Python allows us to access each one of these elements iteratively. That's why we call these collections of data as iterable objects in this context. So in Python, for loop is always used in combination with an iterable object, and this is the syntax to write for loop. For item in iterable. This is some iterable object like a list you can say, and this item is a variable, and inside the for loop you will have some code block. Now what does this for loop do? For loop iterates over the elements of iterable object one by one, executing the code block each time. Let's say in this case we are using this list as the iterable object. Now this item variable will take this value 10 in the first iteration and will execute the code block. Then it will take this value 20 in the second iteration. Again it will execute the code block. Now in the third iteration it takes this value 30 and then executes the code block again. So that's how for loop iterates over the elements of iterable object one by one and executes the code block each time. Now let's see how to use for loop to execute a block of code fixed number of times. And if you are coming from other programming languages like C++ or Java, this is how we write a for loop, right? So we write int I is equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. So what happens here? Initial I takes value 0. So it checks this condition. If it is true, it will execute the code block. And at the end of the iteration, it will increment the value. So I will become 1. Now again it checks the condition I less than 5, it is again true and it will execute the code block. And this continues. And once I value becomes 5, this condition will be false and so it will exit the for loop. So basically here I takes values from 0 to 4, executing this code block each time, which means this code block will be executed 5 times, right? And we can implement the same logic in Python very simply by using something called range function. Let's say we want to print Python 5 times. What we can do is we can write a for loop for I in range of 5. We will be discussing about range function in detail in a while, but to give a brief context, this range of 5 will generate a sequence of integers from 0 to 4. And in each iteration, this variable I will take these values from 0 to 4, executing this block of code each time. This is exactly what is happening here as well, right? But in Python, we can do it very simply by using range function. So what happens when this code is executed? Range of 5 will generate a sequence of integers from 0 to 4. In the first iteration, I will take value 0 and it will print Python. In the second iteration, it will take value 1 and print Python again, and so on till I will take value 4 and it will print Python again. So basically it will execute this statement 5 times. So the output will be Python, 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 Python 5 times. So I have created a new Python file for_loops_1.py inside this control flow folder. So let's create the for loop now. The syntax is for I in range of 5, and we should end it with a colon. Now just like while statements or if statements, the code block has to be indented. And as soon as you press enter, automatically the indentation will be provided. And here we want to simply print Python. All right. Now let's execute this program and see the output. So you can see that it prints Python, Python, Python 5 times. And also one thing to note here is, here the variable name need not be only I. You could have used some other variable name like number as well. It works perfectly fine. If you execute, it prints Python 5 times. But generally when we want to execute a code block some fixed number of times, it is common to use this variable I. And this range function is extremely useful while writing for loops in Python. So let's spend some time to understand about this. We use range function to generate a sequence of integers, and we can use it in 3 different forms. We can use this range function with a single parameter stop, or we can use it with 2 parameters start and stop, or we can also use it with 3 parameters start, stop, and step. Start and stop parameters are kind of obvious. They just indicate where the sequence of integers should start and stop. And step indicates how the sequence of numbers should be incremented or decremented. Based on the number of parameters we use with range function, Python understands what our intention is. If we use a single parameter, that is considered as stop. If we use 2 parameters, they are considered as start and stop. And if we use 3 parameters, they are considered as start, stop, and step in the same sequence. Now as you can see, stop parameter is mandatory in all 3 forms, but start and step parameters are optional. So here we did not specify start and step. And when you don't specify start or step, they will take the default values of 0 and 1. Default value of start will be 0. Default value of step will be 1. One very important point we need to always remember is start is inclusive and stop is exclusive. What do we mean by this? Let's see an example to understand. So here we have a for loop for I in range of 5, and inside the loop we are simply printing the value of this I. Now when we specify a single parameter, it is considered as stop. So stop value is 5. And also when we don't specify start and step, they will take default values. Start will take default value of 0. Step will take default value of 1. So start value is 0 and stop value is 5. And start is inclusive, which means 0 is included in the sequence. In other words, you can say 0 is the first number in the sequence. And stop is exclusive, which means 5 is not included in the sequence. In other words, you can say the sequence will end before 5. So the first number in the sequence is 0 and default value of step is 1, which means the numbers in the sequence are incremented by 1. So the next number will be 0 plus 1, which is 1. And the next one will be 1 plus 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4. Now the next number in the sequence after 4 would have been 5, but we know that stop is exclusive, which means the sequence will stop before 5. So the sequence stops at 4. So range of 5 will produce a sequence of 0 to 4, and I will take each of these values in each iteration in the same order. So here we are trying to print the value of I in each iteration. So the output will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let me run this program and show you the output as well. Right click, run, and as you can see, it prints values 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's go to the next example. Here we have for I in range 1, 6. So here we're specifying 2 parameters. When you specify 2 parameters, first one will be start and second one will be stop. Now we know that start is inclusive and stop is exclusive, which means the sequence starts with 1 but ends before 6. So the first number in the sequence will be 1, and by default step value is 1, which means the numbers in the sequence are incremented by 1. So the next number will be 1 plus 1, 2, and then 2 plus 1, 3, and then 4, and then 5. And stop is exclusive, and so the sequence will stop before 6. So it stops at 5. So range of 1 comma 6 will produce a sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And I will take each of these values in each iteration in the same order. So when you try to print I, the output will be 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So here we have taken range of 1 comma 6. So let me run the program and show you the output. So you can see, for example 3, the sequence generated is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And one thing to notice here is, so the sequence generated here is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, a sequence of 5 integers, right? So this code is executed 5 times. And in the previous example, when we used range of 5, even in this case, a sequence of 5 numbers are generated. So this block of code is executed 5 times in this case as well. But the only difference is when we simply used range of 5, the sequence is from 0 to 4. And when we use range of 1 comma 6, the sequence is from 1 to 5, right? But in both the scenarios, 5 integers are generated in the sequence, and so this block of code is executed 5 times. So if we simply want to execute some piece of code n number of times, we can simply use range of n. Like in this case, where we are simply trying to print Python 5 times. But in some scenarios, we also want to utilize the numbers generated. If we look at this previous example, what are we trying to do here is we are printing the first 5 natural numbers, which means we want to print the numbers from 1 to 5. So in this case, it is important to use start and stop. If we take another example, let's say we want to find the sum of first 5 natural numbers, which means 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Even in this case, the sequence is important. So we have to use start and stop. And sometimes we also might have to use step as well. We'll see some examples later. So in this example, instead of simply printing the values from 1 to 5, let's see how we can add them. So we can initialize a variable total and let's assign initial value of 0. Now what we can do here is, instead of simply printing the value, we can add that value to total. So total equals to total plus I. So in each iteration, values from 1 to 5 are added to the total. So after this for loop, let me simply print sum is colon and then the value of this variable total. And you might be wondering, why am I using this variable name total instead of using variable name sum? The reason is there is an inbuilt function in Python with the name sum. So to avoid any ambiguity, it is better to use some other variable name like total. Alright, so let me run this program, right click, run, and you can see the output is sum is 15. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, which is 15. Now let's see the next example. Here we have for I in range of 1, 10, 2. So when we have 3 parameters, the first one will be start, second one will be stop, and third one will be step. So the sequence starts with 1, first value is 1, and step is 2, which means the numbers are incremented by 2. So the next number will be 3, 1 plus 2, 3. And the next one will be 3 plus 2, 5. And the next one is 5 plus 2, 7. Next one is 7 plus 2, 9. Now the next number in the sequence will be 9 plus 2, 11, but we know that stop is exclusive, right? So we should stop before this stop value. So we should stop before 10. That's why the sequence will be 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9. So always remember, start is inclusive and stop is exclusive. Now let's execute and see the output of this example. Right click, run, and as you can see, it prints sequence of 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9. Till now we have seen the sequences generated in increasing order, right? But can we generate sequences in decreasing order as well? Of course we can. To generate sequences in decreasing order, the step value should be negative. Here we have range of 5, 0, -1. And of course, when we generate a sequence in decreasing order, obviously start should be greater than stop, right? Now, like always, start is inclusive, stop is exclusive. So the sequence starts with 5. So the first number in the sequence will be 5. And step value is -1, which means the numbers are decremented by 1 in each step. So the next number will be 5 minus 1, 4. and the next one is 3, and then 2, and then 1. And after 1, the next number would have been 0, but we know stop is exclusive, right? So we have to stop before reaching 0. That's why the sequence will stop at 1. So the output is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's execute and verify the output. Right click, run, and for this example 5, you can see the output is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now in the next example, we have range of 10, 0, -2. Step value is -2, which means the numbers are decremented by 2. So the first number in the sequence will be 10 and step is -2, which means it is decremented by 2. So the next number will be 8 and then 6 and then 4 and then 2. And after 2 in the sequence we get 0, but we know stop is exclusive. So we have to stop before reaching 0. So the sequence should stop at 2. So when we print this sequence, the output will be 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2. Let's verify this example as well. Right click, run, and as you can see, the output is 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2. Till now we have seen how to use for loops in Python using range function, but we can also use for loops to iterate over other collections of data like lists, strings, sets, dictionaries, etc. We will be discussing about this when we talk about these collections in future tutorials, but let me show you a couple of examples. So in this example, we have a list of numbers 10, 20, 30. And let's say we want to iterate over these elements in the list one by one and print them. We can do it by using for loop, by using this syntax for num in numbers. So this is just a variable name. We could have used any other variable name like I or anything. But because we are accessing numbers, it makes more sense to use a meaningful name like num or number. Alright. So what happens in this case, in the first iteration, num will take value 10. And here we're printing num, so it will print 10. In the second iteration, it will take value 20. So when you print num, it will print 20. And in the third iteration, num will take value 30. And when you print it, it will print 30. So this is how you can iterate over a list of elements using for loop. Similarly, if you take the next example, here we have a string with value Sachin, right? Let's say we want to access the characters of this string one by one. So what we can do is we can write a for loop for ch in name. Again, here we could have used any other variable name as well, but to indicate it's a character, I'm using ch. So for ch in name, and inside the loop, we are printing this value of ch. So what happens here is, in the first iteration, ch will take this character s. In the next iteration, it will take this character a, and then c, and then h, and so on till n. And inside the loop, we are simply printing the value of ch. So this program will print these characters one by one, s, a, c, h, I, n. Similarly, we can also iterate over tuples, sets and dictionaries as well, which we will discuss in future. So let me show you the output of these two examples. Right click, run, and as you can see, when you iterate over a list, this num will take values 10, 20 and 30 in each iteration. And here we're trying to print num in each iteration. So the output will be 10, 20 and 30. Similarly, if you take the next example, here ch will take each one of these characters in each iteration, right? So when you try to print ch in each iteration, the output will be SACHIN. Now let me mention one more thing here. If we want to simply print the list, we could have done it directly by using print of numbers instead of using this for loop. If I run the program, you can see that it prints the list in the output. But what we are trying to understand here is how to access the elements of the list iteratively using a for loop. Same is the case with this string example as well. We are trying to access each character in the string iteratively using the for loop. In this example, we are simply printing the values in the list or characters in the string, but maybe we want to perform some operations on these values, right? That's where for loops will be very useful. We'll be discussing more about this in upcoming tutorials. So this is how you can iterate over a collection of data very easily using for loops. So that is all for this tutorial, and I'll see you soon in the next video.